Hello 2011 LA 590. In this video I'd like to go over a few things that will help you with the first assignment, and I'm on the class Blackboard. I'm going to go ahead and start just by downloading the area 1 or the assignment 1 area.kmz. That's the quick file that I created in class that defines the area that each group will be working within. So in Google Earth, I'll go ahead and navigate to that file and open it up. So there it is. Now a few other things I'd like to go over are just some general troubleshooting. We'll run into a couple little kinks, but honestly that's real common. We live in a beta world in that at any given time a certain percentage of tools just will not work. So it's actually a good thing to know how to work around those to get to a finished product. So in Google Earth, I can see my defined area. Now, what we did in class was use the Add Placemark tool, and it's pretty straightforward. It brings up the property window when you first click on that, and when this property window is open, you can drag and position that placemark, but only when this window is open. If you close it, try to drag it, it just moves the screen. Now, to get that window back, you can either right-click on the actual placemark, or you can right-click under your places list and select either Get Info or Preferences. I think it is on Windows. Or Properties, one of those two. So that brings back our placemark window. Now, also, remember I want you to be creating a spreadsheet that contains the latitude and longitude. Here's where we can find that. And whoops. Let's bring that back. These two numbers here, watch, they'll change as I move my placemark around. So, I'll show you a couple of ways that we can build that spreadsheet, but one way is to just copy and paste these values as these are being created. Now on the placemark itself, I believe in the assignment I just said use an appropriate icon. It doesn't really matter because I'm more concerned about the point, the actual location of the point, as and not so much the icon that's being used. Now, if you want to change it, you click this little icon right up here. And I recommend that you use one of these symmetrical icons, because when you have the push pins or these little bubbles, the points are a little bit different. For example, on this one, we would want to place the tip of that pin on the actual point that we are marking. If you use something that's a circle like this, or even this kind of crosshairs, it's the center of the icon, which makes a little bit more sense for me. Now, as you are building this, I'm going to go ahead and just drop that right there. You may want to only show the point and not the place mark label. And as you're doing this, you probably should be giving these descriptive terms or names, and you'll see that reflected or not. That's what I was looking for. But these will build up pretty quick, and it might be a little bit too much noise to be looking at. So as you're editing that, you can set the label opacity to be 0. And what's nice about this is any subsequent place marks that you create will retain those same values. So, if I really quickly just wanted to fire all these off, I could do it this way. But a couple of you pointed out, there's got to be an easier way, right? So there's a lot of ways. I don't know if one is necessarily easier than the other, but I'll go ahead and show you one in particular in this video, and then another one in another video later on. But one option is to use Google Maps. We're using Google Earth. Google Maps, it all points to the same underlying GeoWeb infrastructure. And let me go to my browser. That's just maps.google.com. Now, if you've got a Gmail account, you've probably got a Google account. But if you don't, you'll need to either create one or signed in if you have one and it's not signed in. So if you first come to this site, maps.google.com, and click on My Places. Now I'm not logged in, so if you don't have an account or you're not logged in, you will see this little button here. So go ahead and just click on that, create an account if you don't have one. It's free and fairly painless. I'll go ahead and log in. So now if I click on My Maps, and I'll click on Maps here, I've only got a couple in here. I don't store a lot on this. Now there's a few differences in how this is saved. The Google Earth way saves everything on your computer. If it's under your places over here, generally it's a file that is local on your computer. When you create something with Google Maps, it's a cloud-based service. So unless you specify otherwise, everyone can see this. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to go ahead and create a map, and we'll just call this Making Placemarks. And here's where you'd say public or unlisted. It defaults to public. And I'll hit save. Now, very important, you've got an option here to import. So you can import a couple different files, a KMZ or a KML, usually. If you click on it now, and I'll go ahead and choose that same assignment 1 area file that I downloaded to start the video, and click upload from file, I get this. So for some reason it's not working, and this is essentially a giant web-based application, so it's not like I can do much on my end to fix it. So small problem there. Fortunately, they offer another way. You can host this file on a web server. And I'm not going to ask you guys to do that, but I've taken that file and placed it at this address, and you need the http://tinyurl.com/LA5902011. So if you enter this URL from this import option, there it goes. It brings it in. So back in business, it's a part of this map. You'll only see the import option once you are creating a map. And notice as I zoom in and out, the thickness doesn't change. It's always 20 pixels. So just keep in mind, it's the center of that line that is the confines of our assignment. And if I click on it, I can edit it here, I think. Yeah, here we go. So if it's a little bit too thick, I'll go ahead and say 10% or 10 pixels. I'm curious what this will do. Snap to roads. Funny. So if you do that, it takes that shape and it best tries to snap it to roads. Let's see here. I'm going to need to undo that because that's not what we want. Edit, click on this, and from here I should be able to delete it. There we go. So let me import that once more. Okay, so back to adding place marks. It's a slightly different way in Google Maps, but it's the same general idea. Now here are the tools once you are editing a map in Google Map. We can pan, we can draw routes like that. If I double click, it will complete. And I ended at the Salvation Army, interestingly. But the place marks are right here. So if I click on the place mark, now notice this icon is a little different, but we can kind of see an X. That X is where this place mark is going to drop. So once I click, it places it. And at this point, it's kind of the same convention. You add a place mark, you drop it. And our dialog window, don't worry so much about the description area right now. We might look at that in the future. So on and so forth. Here's where this potentially might be a little bit nicer to use for some of you. As long as we're editing this map, now the map contains anything that I'm drawing, you can just click and drag to move these around. We don't have to invoke that editing window. So, we could just kind of rough these out and then put them into position. Don't worry so much about the icon. That can be changed later on. But just know that, this is a little bit different way to edit this. You don't even need to give it a name. We could do that later. Now, one thing Google Maps, the web service, does not do is show you the latitude and longitude. But we can get that when we get back to Google Earth. And here's how you do that. So let's zoom out at my wonderful map here. I'll go ahead and save this. Once that's saved, you have to go to Done, and you have to click on My Places because we need to see this map. So there it is right there. And whoops, I actually went too far. I didn't need to quite go that far. Once we're looking at this map, I'm just viewing it. I'm not editing it, but I've got this option here. I can rate this because it's all cloud and web-based. I can write a comment. These two are very important. One just says KML. That will download the file as a KML file. The other one is a view in Google Earth, which does like it'll sound, but before it views it in Google Earth, it downloads it as a KML. So these two buttons kind of do the same thing, but very important distinction, and let me show you that. So the first thing I'll do is click on the view in Google Earth icon, and let me bring up my downloads area so you can see what this looks like. So it downloaded a file called makingplacemarks.kml. If I click on the KML link, it downloads a file called the same thing. Now this one added a 1 because it's putting it in the same downloads folder. But they're actually very different. And let me go back to Google Earth to show you that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete my temporary places. Let's zoom out. So I will go ahead and open those files. I'll do this one first. Now this is the one that I said view in Google Earth. And it looks very similar to what I just drew in Google Earth. The icons don't transfer over. That's a styling thing. Remember when I said different applications will style the data differently? It just does not have the information or the icons to be able to style those. But hopefully you know how to change those. Once you are in Google Earth, you should be able to do get info and change it. Okay. But this is very important. See this little icon over here with that little kind of green dot and that line? That's telling you that this is a network link. Because we created this with essentially a cloud-based service, this is all living on a server off of our computer. So even though we're under My Places, and I told you this generally is stuff that exists on your computer, that's a little different because that is a network link that is existing somewhere else, but the link exists on your computer. Here's where that can be valuable because these maps can be embedded in websites, they can be linked to in Google Earth, they can be emailed, etc. But if it's a network link, we can change that. So let's go ahead and edit this map. You know what? I'm going to delete that boundary. I'll go ahead and add another line. Now this is kind of cool too. We've got an option here to snap two roads, draw a line along roads. So this is kind of neat. If you start a point and just kind of randomly click, it sticks to the roads. And I think it even honors the one ways and the two ways. So that's why that can get a little goofy looking here. Double click to finish, change the color here. All right, and before I get too sidetracked, I'm going to save that, go back to Google Earth, and because that is a network link, I can right click and select refresh. There we go. So it's essentially like a website. When it gets updated, it gets refreshed in whatever browser that happens to be looking at that. So let me go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to open up the other file. And remember that other file is the one. Oops, I did the wrong one. I was a little confused there for a second. I meant to do this one, the one with the 1 in it. So back in Google Maps, when I saved it, you remember this one downloads the network link. This icon or this CamHel link downloads the actual file. So now if I expand that, I don't see that network link, and these are just pieces of information that you can drag and drop however you've got your information organized over here. Now I believe I've mentioned it before, but it's a good idea to be thinking about the structure of your data before or sooner rather than later, because now if I create a folder called My Placemarks, I can't drag more than one at a time, which kind of stinks, but you get the idea. And once those are all done, if I wanted to do a batch edit, this is just review of stuff we've done before, but I will share the style, and I'll say I want that icon to be a boat, because boats will be floating through Fargo in about 7 months. Here we go. And notice my shapes are still there, just very, very light. So, all right, hopefully that will help you do the assignment. It gives you another option for creating these. In another video, I will show you how to take this data and make a spreadsheet in a more of an automated fashion than the simple cutting and paste. So go ahead and try some of these things out, and let me know if you have any questions.